There you go. Well, hi, everyone. Thank you for coming to the Traverse Area District Library Zoom programming. We are super excited to have a few very wonderful authors. I was just mentioning that I am was feverishly reading the book last night because of this program today. And it's just so good that I actually stopped, and I'm just gonna revel in it and savor it for the rest of it. I'm on chapter 18, so I'm super excited about it. But both of these authors are just, I love that you guys came together. The book itself is the perfect blend of nonfiction and fiction together, and it makes the best historical fiction novel I think that I've read. And I'm a super frivolous reader, but this one is, I'm into it and I love it. And listen to it also. And the narrator is fantastic. And anyone likes to listen to books as well. We have a problem at the library that our physical copies of the book haven't been delivered yet, but we do have it as an ebook and an audiobook. And right now, if anyone can access Libby through our Overdrive system, usually it's just one user at a time for the audiobook, and right now it could be multiple users. So there are 100 copies available for people to listen to if they want to right now, who have access to it. So that's wonderful. But I'm going to turn it over to Tosca Lee and Marcus Brotherton. They're going to tell us about their writing process, their brand new book, and anything else we want to talk about. Welcome.
Great to be here.
Thanks for having us. Marcus, I'm going to let you start.
Tosca, if you could write a book about anything, what would it be about?
Shipwrecks.
What about Sasquatches?
That's right. Knowing what I know now.
So for those who wonder what's going on, we were just talking beforehand about the real big draws in this area seem to be shipwrecks and Sasquatch. So that's the joke there. But tell everybody about how this project came to be, and about the desperate phone call from to you that started it all.
Well, I'm going to say it was, I keep saying 5 years, but it took a year to go through all the editing. So I'm going to say it's about 6 years ago now. I think that's right, that Marcus called me and said, hey, I've been working on this project in between other projects, this kind of back burner book. It's not contracted, not funded right now. He said it's about 3 best friends who become part of the Bataan Death March. And I said, the what? Because I was not familiar with this chapter of World War II history. In fact, I knew very little about what went on in the Pacific Theater. And so he explained to me this history of America's presence in the Philippines, the American Filipino Allied forces there, the surrender in 1942. And the fact that we had, I think it was 60,000 Filipino soldiers and 10,000 or so Americans. Am I remembering correctly, Marcus? I think that's right.
Those numbers sound good.
Yeah, and they surrendered on April 9th in 1942, and were marched over 60 miles out of the Bataan Peninsula to a POW camp. And so anyway, I was not familiar with this chapter of history. So when Marcus explained it, and I knew Marcus for several years by that point, and I was familiar with his work, familiar with his World War II biographies. I knew he was a New York Times bestselling author, and I had read his novel Feast for Thieves and endorsed it a few years before. So when he invited me to come into the project, I said, it sounds like an important story. He had done a lot of work on it already for 7 years. I don't know if I knew that at the time. And so I said, yeah. And then I came into the project and added 5 years to the process. So this is a novel now of 12 years in the making. So that is the phone call that I received that kicked this whole thing off.
So if you're familiar with my writing, I interview a lot of veterans in real life, and mostly my work is in nonfiction. And I love nonfiction. I've got a tremendous respect for the craft. I had read an oral history project about the Bataan Death March, and became fascinated with it, with the topic, with the era of history, the fact that real life people went through this ordeal and some survived. Just blew me away. And so, just out of tribute to the real veterans who were there, I wanted to do a book that shined the spotlight on them. And the thing about fiction is immersive. And so I really wanted the reader not to be immersed in the horror of this, but just to get a real sense of what was it like, what truly went on, what was the setting, what did these heroes, these true life heroes, actually go through. And so that's what led to the start of this book. I had written a first draft. I had sent it out to early readers, and the feedback I got at the start was that it was good. It was very good. But as I sat with that, I went, I want this to be great. I want this to go from an A to an A plus, or a B minus to A plus, or whatever it was. And I felt like the veterans who are truly there deserve this. And so I called my agent, and he said, yeah, it's a little gritty in places, and call Tosca. She will know what to do. And so I was a little bit too close to the forest, through the trees, and Tosca was able to straighten things out. I gave her just a carte blanche to do anything she wants with it. I said, just be as free as you want to be. And she took that. She did her own research to check out everything I had done, and make sure it was okay, and really to immerse herself in the process.
That's extremely rare, by the way, I think, Marcus, when one collaborator, one author will say, here's my research, here's my draft, here's my stuff. You sent me some books. And you said, dive in. And I think that's extremely rare, because I think most authors are so close to their work. They don't want to, they want to hover. And, and Marcus basically just said, have at it. And it was, I did for several years. And then also during the pandemic, it sat idle for a time during lockdown, because I kind of went into creative lockdown during the pandemic. I just was having a hard time being creative while all that was going on. And so it wasn't until later 2020 when I was able to kick it back into gear. And Marcus probably thought that, the project and I both fell into a black hole during that time, but we didn't. And we came out of that. So how about I talk a little bit about the story itself? So this is the story of the main character. Jimmy Propfield is the main character, and it's a story of him and his two best friends, Hank and Billy, and then their fourth best friend, who is Billy's older sister, Claire. And we have a dual timeline in this story. And so it begins with them having enlisted and being in the Philippines, where life actually seems really great, because this was considered a plum assignment. The weather was beautiful. They're in Manila, the Pearl of the Orient. The dollar went far. You could get anything there. You could go to nightclubs. There were wonderful resources available. They could pay a few bucks every month and chip in and have help with getting their uniforms cleaned and the kitchen duty done. And so it was really a highly desirable posting. And so we start there. And within hours of December 7th, the events of Pearl Harbor unfold. And what I was not aware of before is that within hours after that, the Philippines is plunged into war. It's bombed, and war begins there in earnest. And so it's the story of that, but we also have a dual timeline. So we also go back in time, starting in the 30s, 1930, and then through the 30s, as we watch these kids grow up together, as we watch them come of age, and then we understand this bond that creates the brotherhood between the three of them. And then we also see Jimmy's growing relationship with Claire. And these are the memories, and these are the bonds that are going to sustain them and sustain our main character throughout all the events of the war and the Death March and life as POWs.
The last veterans I've talked to in real life within the last 3 months, they have been 101 and 103. And these men were still very coherent, and yet very much in realization that, you know, the time is short, and they're in their last lap. And so to interact with these men and to hear their stories firsthand, and then translate them onto a page. And so these stories are recorded for posterity. I think it's just very important. And certainly that's what we're trying to do with this book.
Mm-hmm. And so many of those men didn't talk about their experiences when they first came back. And those who did, it seems like so many of those accounts happened later in life when they became older.
Yeah. We we wanted to put the protagonist, Jimmy Propfield, in a difficult spot, because that's often part of just good storycraft. And so one of the big story questions in the book is Jimmy's best friend, Billy, is put in a very difficult situation where his life is threatened. And Jimmy can do something about it, but he's potentially got to take the life of an innocent man in order to save his best friend. And so it's the true horns of a dilemma. What would you do in a situation like that? And that really begs the question, what do we do when life gets difficult? We have to impose meaning on our life. We have to impose wisdom on our life. And so Jimmy figuring his way out of that and how to go forward is part of the appeal of the story.
Mm-hmm. And this is a character who is a pastor's son. And so right and wrong is very black and white for him before the war. But then after, and in the midst of war, it becomes very gray.
That's exactly the part where I'm at in the movie. I can see it being a movie, but in the book is where just the beginning of that, where they're told what they need to do. Yeah, it's good. Here's a question I have. Who is the one who decided to do the back and forth in time? Or was it a collaborative on that?
How did we land on that? I can't remember anymore. I don't remember. This has been a few years and I'm over 50 now. So
yeah.
I was still in my 40s.
We had a number of ideas that we just sort of laid on the table, and I had done some work, and then Tosca did a bunch of work, and then we went back and forth over the manuscript several times together just to get into one voice. So we knew that we needed to lift the reader out of the grit every so often. If you just get grit, it becomes hard to take, and it actually loses its power. Yeah. And we didn't want to lose that power at all. And so we wanted to intersperse the war story with this sweeter, homespun, simultaneously happening story that happens to Claire and the friendships there. And I think the effect worked in the end. So
yeah,
definitely.
I don't remember how that came about. I don't. We've been through many iterations of this book before we finally, we rewrote. And it's been several different drafts. So
was Claire always in the book from the beginning? Yeah.
Claire was, she was named something else at the start, but she became Claire over time, and Claire she is today. So
yeah,
that's fantastic. If anyone else have any questions, also you can unmute yourself and just ask. It's pretty open here, or if you don't have the ability to speak, you could always chat your questions in our Q&A as well.
We do have a historical figure who's really interesting in this book too, a female guerrilla, female freedom fighter who was from the Philippines, and she's historical. And how did you found her, Marcus, originally? So, and people are fascinated with her.
Yeah, here was this woman commander of a guerrilla outfit, basically just a civilian who knew how to fight. And after Imperial Japan had taken over her country, and so many of her fellow citizens were incarcerated, she went to war of her own volition. And this fascinated me, that this person would do it, and she was actually very effective. And over time, as she waged her war in various clandestine ways, she gathered people to her, and American GIs who had escaped from the POW camps, and then her fellow citizens. And so, yeah, fascinating figure, strong female leader who is just going all out and foot to the floor, and helping turn the tide of the war. So
Nice. How, like, in each of your writing processes, do you write every single day? Or do you kind of set aside different days of the week, or do you just do it when it hits you and you're like, oh, I better write that down?
I do not. I know that the conventional wisdom is writers write every single day. So by that definition, I'm not a writer, because if I'm not working on a project, if I'm in between, or if a book has just come out and there's different, marketing things and appearances and signings and stuff, I'm not writing it. I'm too distracted. So not for me. How about you, Marcus?
yeah, I often write most days. Writing is all I do. It's a full-time job, which it is for Tosca as well. My day job, so to speak, is collaborative writer. So I'm editing. I'm helping other authors with their books as well. And I was trained in a newsroom. I was 5 years in a newsroom on the way up, and there was just a sort of a constant pressure to go and write when you're writing for a newspaper. And we weren't allowed to have writer's block and things like that. Not to say that Tosca has that, but it was just sort of ingrained to me that you sit and you start with that one true sentence that Hemingway talked about, and you go. So it's pretty much an 8 to 6 job for me, Monday through Friday. I will work the occasional weekend or nights. But I do, and I do some school age kids at home as well. So I try and be present for them. I do a lot of writing almost every day, if not every day. And then it is difficult to mentally concentrate for 8 to 9 hours that closely. And so if I am scheduling appointments, it's often in the afternoon, and I'll take a break from my desk and go to the post office or whatever needs to be done.
Where did you find veterans that you interviewed?
So I started in an amazing place. Actually, when I was at the newsroom, I interviewed every veteran I could, just because I was curious about the topic. When I got into books, my agent knew the attorney for Don Malarkey and Lieutenant Buck Compton, and they were two of the original Band of Brothers. If you ever saw that miniseries on HBO, it was produced by Tom Hanks and Steven Spielberg. So Lieutenant Buck Compton lived up in my area. And one day my agent just kind of called me out of the blue, and he said, hey, do you ever see Band of Brothers? I'm like, yeah, I saw that show about the paratroopers, World War II. He's like, Lieutenant Buck Compton lives 45 minutes from you. He's interested in writing his memoirs. He needs a little bit of help in writing the book. Are you interested? I said yes immediately, and then hung up the phone and just went, what have I done? I mean, it was just, it was not a subject I'm a journalist, not a historian. And so, and I was studying the comparative titles to what Lieutenant Compton would write about. And I was going, okay, I'm up against, well-credentialed historians here, and, Colonel Cole Kingseed, and sort of well-credentialed military guys. And, what do I bring to the table except the ability to ask questions? So I read a bunch of books just to get up to speed. And then I went to work talking with Lieutenant Compton, and he proved to be a very patient man. And a great teacher. He had been a detective in his career and a judge, and he had prosecuted Sirhan for the murder of Bobby Kennedy. So a very precise man, and yet surprisingly warm and friendly, and just kind of brought me along. And his book went on to be a national bestseller. After that was finished, a bunch of Buck's friends wanted to get their books done as well, and so that one thing led to another, and here I am years later, having written a lot of military nonfiction. So that's kind of the short story of how it all happened.
And one of those guys, Sid Phillips, has a cameo in our novel too.
Sid Phillips, yeah, fought in the Pacific. I met him a few years ago at a air show, and Sid went on after the war. He became a doctor, and again, a very astute man, and really processed the war well, I would say.
Well, I know I asked you this question in our 3 to 5 questions for authors before, but
Oh, that was so
again.
fun. That was such a great thing.
Oh, good. But Tosca, do you think that you'll well, here, why don't I ask this first? Do you guys think you'll collaborate again, or work either with each other, or Tosca with another nonfiction and Marcus with another novelist? Or I mean, did you like that process of meshing the two together?
I think so. I have another project lined up right now, and so that's another novel. I think whether Marcus and I work together again depends on how this book does. So it just kind of comes down to those practicalities. I think we're open to it, and we've kind of figured out how to do it. That's the challenge of anytime you write with somebody, I think, is figuring out one another's strengths, figuring out how best to work together, and figuring out, getting to the point where you trust each other too, because that's a big part of the writing process. So I think we'll see. I don't know, Marcus, what do you think?
What do you think? Did we get along, or what?
It only came to fisticuffs a few times. No, we didn't fight. We had moments where it was like, I really want this in here. We can't take this out, and here's why. And so we've had, those types of things, but we get along real well. Marcus is the most easygoing, like low ego, person to work with. So he's very, very easy to work with, very easy to get along with. And, and we have a lot of shared values. And so that makes it also very easy as well.
We had read each other's earlier books, and that was helpful. So speaking for me, I came into the process with a high degree of respect for the craft, Tosca's craft. And I knew she could write. I knew she could write well. She often writes in layers where she's saying one thing, but really it's kind of hearkening or an echo to something else, which I love. And I try and do that in my own writing wherever possible. So it wasn't like we sort of had to sell each other on the writing ability, which was good.
I would think that your next one, if you collaborate together, would be a shorter time period, because you don't have to, I don't know, you know what I mean? I think maybe Tosca should write something, and then Marcus should come in on it and then add his stuff, rather than
That's a great idea.
and see how that works.
And have it not take 12 years.
I like that.
We already know each other now, so
I'd be the hoverer, though. I'd be like, wait a minute, wait, no.
What I do like about the book too, I was trying to remember what you call it. In the beginning of where the book starts, you have all these people who read the book and give you,
the endorsements. Yeah.
Yes, the endorsements. Oh my gosh, there's so many. And I love to read those first, because then you see who likes your stuff and who have I read. Like I'm drawing a blank right now, but there's at least 10 names on there who I absolutely love their stuff, and they gave you guys high marks. And right there, I'm like, well, I have to read this book. Not just because I have to for this, but because I want to, because I love those authors to begin with. And if they're endorsing you, then that's a major plus. There's so many there, which is fantastic. Usually you just see one or two. And I really like that.
We hit the vein of gold when it comes to endorsements, and we're really fortunate. I think we had over 20, and yeah, people whose work we really respect.
Oh. It's sort of tough to brag about your own work, but I say this just because I think the process worked. Like, did it truly work to move this book from a B+ to an A+? There are a number of trade review journals that that look at a book beforehand, and these trade review journals can be quite nasty sometimes, or sometimes they'll just ignore a book altogether. I mean, they're completely impartial. They're paid to be tough, and if they like you, they'll give you a good review. If they really like you, they'll give you a star review. Now, starred reviews are just incredibly hard to get. In my writing career, I've got maybe one or two in 23 years of writing. But this book, it's received high praise from Publishers Weekly, Book List, and Library Journal. And all three of those trade reviews gave this book starred reviews, which is pretty much unheard of to get 3-star reviews like that. So I think it's a testimony just to, man, stick at it. And if you're working on a project and you want it to be great, don't take good for a substitute, and keep working until you move that project from good to great.
This was definitely a sell no wine until it's time situation. Remember that old ad for it was a winery, and their commercial was, "We shall sell no wine until it's time."
Ernest Gallo, wasn't it?
Something
Julia
like
Gallo.
that. Yeah.
I mentioned before that I can see this being a movie. Have you guys discussed that at all? Has anyone come forward or anything? I know it just came out, but I'm sure it's been out and around, talked about, bantered maybe.
We've received a couple of nibbles so far. Nobody has bit, but it usually takes a while before they, and yeah, even when you get an option. So what happens is a movie gets or a book gets optioned first, and that's a great step. Again, there can be a lot of steps between an option and actually seeing it on film. I was Adam Makos's writing partner for a book called Devotion, about the Korean War. And we worked on that book in, I want to say 2014, 2015, and it got optioned quite quickly. And it just came out last year on the big screen. So it was another probably 7 to 8 years beyond that. But it came out, so it was great to see.
Yeah. I have, I think, 6 books optioned right now. And
Okay.
some of those have been optioned for several years. So, it's it can happen fast or it can happen slow.
Brian Grazer, if you're watching this, please give me a call.
Ron Howard.
Yes, absolutely. What books, who are your favorite authors? What's something that you like to immerse yourself in? Anytime that author comes out with a book, you have to be the first one to get it. Besides your own.
A lot of my favorites are favorites that have been favorites for a long time. So The Red Tent, The Mists of Avalon, Memoirs of a Geisha, Anne Rice's work. These are the Clan of the Cave Bear. These are books that have been with me for a long time, that have really impacted my desire to write in the first place. My very first novel, when it got thoroughly, soundly rejected by a major New York agency that I applied to in 1990, rejected it completely, totally trashed the story and everything, but said it was reminiscent of Clan of the Cave Bear. And that was all I needed to go on and think maybe I had a shot at doing this. And that's the only thing that kept me going. And these are books that I've read over and over. So I go back to books like that.
I love David Benioff, anything he writes. Laura Hillenbrand hits the standard that we all try and attain, I think. It's funny because she's a Facebook friend, and every so often I'll get a review that compares me to Laura, and so I'll send it to her and she just howls. It's just fun. I love Elmore Leonard, who wrote Get Shorty, and if you go back and see some of his old Western stuff that he was writing, wow, what a writer. I mean, he really sort of learned his craft writing Westerns and then went into modern crime. Tremendous writer. I've read pretty much everything Hemingway has ever written. And I've copied out long sections of his writing just to try and get his words flowing through me. He was a reductionist. You know, he was not so much interested in the words as the feeling that the words conveyed. And he was trying to do that with a real economy of language, which is brilliant and much harder to do than it seems. So I think he sets the standard as well for everything we try and do.
I remember Tosca mentioned a bakery in Paris, Amy Runyon's new book that's coming out, I think in August, maybe.
Yeah.
I have that book on order and my name's on the holds list, so I can't wait to. I had seen
Good.
a review of that a while ago, so I'm
Good.
excited. And you reminded me of it, so I'm like, oh yeah, I got to remember to get that book. So that was nice.
Yeah, for sure.
So what kind of things do you
visit, and I handed her the advance copy of that.
what are you working on right now, Tosca?
A medieval thriller
Oh, nice.
about the European witch hunts. So, yeah, still
Tosca likes those easy topics, you know.
A little light reading, more light reading.
I am working with a celebrity that unfortunately I can't name him due to a non-disclosure agreement in the contract. I can't name him yet, but he is a tremendous guy who does a whole lot of good in the world, and it's been an absolute delight to get to know him. So it'll come out soon, and then the reveal will happen.
Is it like a memoir, biography?
Yeah, it's his life story.
Oh, nice. Nice. Does anyone else have any questions at all? I feel like I'm monopolizing everything. Oh, what library resources did you use as you were researching the book? Like the Library of Congress, or did you do, well, first library resources, let's talk about that, if you did.
Well, Library of Congress, you're absolutely right with that one, because there's a lot of photos from the Library of Congress that are stored there from this period of history. I mean, of the actual march. I'm not sure who took those. I don't know if those were propaganda photos taken by the Japanese or what, but that definitely those photos.
Yeah, it's sort of anything and everything. National Archives. I will email people in the Philippines and libraries there to see what's what. I will go to almanacs and just to see, you know, what the weather was on a certain day. I have probably 3 or 4 good friends who are librarians, and I will often run things by them or say, I can get to a certain place when I'm trying to get here. Do you think you could get farther than me in a research process? And they can. They have great connections. So if you're ever stuck, ever in doubt, call a librarian.
Ask the
They will get you where you
librarian.
need to go. Yeah.
Yes, I can attest to that, and not necessarily for myself, although it's nice to work with a good crew who each of them have their strong points. And if everyone listens to the question, they'll always offer something else. But we have one in particular who is on this Zoom right now too, who is the best researcher ever.
Really?
She can find anything for anyone for the most part.
Good to know.
Did you do anything like travel anywhere to like Philippines or Bataan Peninsula?
That one's on my list, so I did not physically go. But my husband and I have talked quite a bit through the work on this project and afterwards about how we need to just go. There's been a lot of Google Maps involved, a lot of, you know, real-time, you know, satellite type stuff, and a lot of so many maps involved, and so many, you know, publications and things like that. I mean, everything from publications, maps, to recipes, to accounts written by people from the area of things like, there's a scene when they go into San Fernando and there's these silver stars hanging under the eaves because it's Christmas. And that all just, you know, came out of the research and from the accounts of people who have lived there from the time, talking about the kind of decorations they did and, you know, everything to that. So, but actually going, it's on my list because I really, really, really want to see it.
Same, yeah, it was on the list and COVID hit and plans changed. At one point, I hired a Filipino researcher, Jamar Gamble, who's a good friend via Facebook. We've talked several times over the phone, and he lived in the Philippines for several years. He was born there and knew some of the language, and he was able to straighten out a couple places and just lend another air of authenticity to it. So.
And I have to say too, some of those survivor accounts, their accounts, even shared later in life, are so remarkably detailed. I mean, the detail is just incredible. I mean, everything from like the boys' barracks with the big bay windows and the bougainvillea, and the names of the flowers, things like that they would remember, the price of a beer. So I mean, I can't remember what I ate for lunch yesterday, so I don't know how they were able to recall all these details, but just incredible recall.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have much say in the covers of the books? I mean, I think this cover is very impactful.
Mm-hmm. This cover artist is amazing. She's done a lot of big name books, and I have immense respect for her. We saw the concept and just, we saw several variations on this concept and just really loved it. And I think the main thing was making sure that the uniforms were the correct uniform.
Which they got, yeah, and it was great, and the colors are really on point, and I think it really pops on a bookshelf. So we were quite happy with the cover.
And the back of the cover too. I don't know if you guys have seen it, but the one thing I love about this, you've got the three best friends here, but then when you turn it, you have Claire, who's at home with the letters right here. And at one time, one of the titles we ran through, and there were many, was Letter to Bataan. So, yeah.
That's nice. I had another question and I just completely forgot.
It'll come to you.
It will come to me.
I really like that back too, because, I wanted this story to be friendly to readers, of any age, any gender, not just, this isn't just military fiction for male readers or for World War II aficionados. This is an accessible story for anybody.
The themes are much broader than combat, and in fact, Betsy, you were saying that it's not so much a war story as it is a story about friendship, which I thought was a very good assessment of the book.
Yeah, I love that, because I think I know I told you I am a frivolous reader, but it really wasn't. It's a war would not be anything I would ever choose to read about someday. But yeah, but it's not about that. It really is about the friendship, and granted, I'm only not even quite halfway through, and it has me. And the war part is very impactful, but it's the friendship that I want to see and see where it goes, and from the past and also the future.
Yeah, I think the story really begs the question: what would you do for your friends if your friends are truly in trouble? If your friends are truly needing your support, your help, how far will you go to save them? And it's funny, when we write things, I also learn from what I write, or learn from what I research in particular. And it was a question that I wrestled with writing the book. Boy, if I was in a situation like that, what would I have done? And even today, will I go the extra mile for my friends? That's a great question to continually ask and continually answer.
Mm-hmm. Dana says she might need to get a hard copy in addition to her Kindle version. Please do. And by the way, if you do, you can write to us. We have book plates, and we'll send you one for your hardcover book. So,
oh, nice.
To do that, yeah.
I read an interview, I think that Marcus, you did a while ago, and they asked what your fictional couple was. Who was your favorite fictional couple? And I loved your answer from Madam Secretary, Dr. Elizabeth and Henry McCord. I just think did you watch all of Madam Secretary? Obviously.
We've watched a lot of it. Yeah. A classy couple and they're equals, and it's a good partnership, right? I mean, they just, they both have hard lives and hard jobs, and they're trying to raise kids and be good parents in the midst of that, and try for a little bit of downtime at the end of the day, which is, I think, everybody we're all kind of trying for the same thing there. So it shows them succeeding in spite of sort of ups and downs to life, which I really like.
Yeah, they're one of my favorite couples too. I didn't watch Madam Secretary until COVID, and then I couldn't get enough of it. And I still listen to it. I listen to it like music. I do that with movies and television, and I'll have it on in the background. And that's the one I might always go to, because they're just they have such a great relationship. And more people, even though I know they're fictionalized characters, I like that more people should aspire to them. So I always actually look at that kind of relationships in books as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so I like that equality for Claire and Jimmy also in your book. There's just a little bit there. I mean, granted, I'm not all the way through yet, but in that beginning part, she's more of an equal and a best friend rather than, boyfriend, girlfriend, which is nice.
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah, Claire is strong and wise, and she's got a great sense of humor, and we all like her, but she's got her flaws too. And that makes her just a well-rounded three-dimensional character. So yeah, I think after the book was all said and done, I went, oh, I really like Claire. I like where Claire went.
Yeah. Well, any other final thoughts, or anyone else have any questions at all that we could ask these wonderful writers? I know it's kind of hard on Zoom, but you can unmute yourself if you really want to.
Tosca, what's one thing no interviewer has ever asked you before? That's my question. That's my wrap-up question.
I have no idea.
You've done a lot of interviews in your life.
Yeah, I've done a lot. I don't know how many I've done. I saw Cindy started to have Cindy, did you have a question? Oh, wait, she's still muted. I still can't hear you.
Oh,
There. Oh, there it goes.
there it goes. When is the best time of day for you to write?
Marcus? Yes.
I'm freshest in the morning for sure. I do lots better in the morning than I do later in the day.
I used to write through the night. I would start anywhere between 2 or 3 in the afternoon and go until 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in the morning. And then I'd sleep until noon. And then the lawnmower guys where I lived before I got married would start up at 8 in the morning, and I'd be like, curses. But I got married 7 years ago to a farmer and became an instant mom. I married a single dad. And this weird thing happened. I started going to bed closer and closer to normal times, and as subsequently getting up, in the morning. And so I've had to switch a little bit. And so I'm kind of in this weird transition where I'm not sure what my best writing is, but I think it is starting to become more of a morning thing for me now. And I'm still trying to think, Marcus, what no one's ever asked me, and I can't think of anything.
So here's the funny backstory to that question.
What is it?
Years ago at the newspaper, I was interviewing one of the members of Grand Funk Railroad. If you ever remember that band.
I remember that.
And he's the coolest of the cool, and just laid back and just professional and so chill. And I'm this young, nervous cub reporter, just trying to ask me everything I can. And that was my last question for him, because I'd read it in a book somewhere or something like that. And he kind of goes, "Oh man, that's the coolest question ever. I don't know." And he just goes, "I don't know, boxers or briefs? Boxers." So that was his answer.
I love it.
Yeah.
Usually with the fine print, we ask people, if you were an animal, what kind of animal would you be and why? But I didn't ask you guys that one. I can now, I suppose.
I've answered that before because this is the weirdest thing, but so 27 years ago, I was Mrs. Nebraska. So that was this whole other pageant life thing that I fell into. I never did pageants before, but one of the judges actually asked me that question, which has nothing to do with being Mrs. Nebraska. And had I been thinking correctly, I would have said a monkey because I'm a very curious person. But at the time I had a pet lizard. So I said a lizard because it was the only thing that came into my mind. So Marcus, what would you be?
I would be a horse.
You'd be a horse?
Yeah, So one of my favorite movies of all time, perhaps my favorite movie, is The Black Stallion. It's a kid's movie, but it's just got really classic themes, and it's just really aesthetically pleasing. And this horse running along a beach with the blue sea. So I think that imagery appeals to me a lot. Where I think I just want to run along the sea.
That's funny.
Okay, I want to change my answer now.
To a black stallion also.
I want to be a monkey running along the sea.
That's fantastic. Just FYI, Grand Funk is a Michigan, a Flint area band. So.
Oh, really?
Awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Thank you, Catherine. She mentioned that. I knew they were Michigan. I didn't know they were Flint, but Catherine's from Flint. So.
Yeah, nice.
Nice.
Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you guys so much for coming. This is much appreciated. Smaller libraries like we're not super small, but we're small enough. The biggest one in Northern Michigan, at least. We don't get big authors too much. And when you do these, especially with the in-person, but these Zoom ones is just fantastic. And I appreciate you reaching out. We just did one of Shelley Shepherd Gray as well. And it's just amazing to speak with people, authors that we only see on our shelves, and to put a face and a voice to it is really wonderful. This
is fun for us. This is very fun for us to talk about this project that was so many years in the making, but also because, our publishers in Michigan, and the very first and only time Marcus and I ever met was last October for publishers meetings in Michigan. So yeah, we've only met once in person in all that time, and it was in your state.
Wow, great. Well, thank you very much. Catherine mentioned this was great to listen to, but she's also at the reference desk right now at our library.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for
Thank you, everybody. It's great to connect like this.
Yeah, it is.
Thank you.
Please read the story.